System riding to the core. Yeah. Reppin' inner city left.
This is the Inner City Left broadcast. Today is Wednesday, March 25th. I am Amin TMK alongside Amoja, Lil Tanky Summer. Amoja, hello. How are you doing? Welcome to Peacetime. We're back on Peacetime. We're taking a week break from the Iran war. It's all good. We're talking to the other Ayatollah.
Mm-hmm. We're both going to share.
They're going to
share
Straits of Hormuz.
Sharing
The Straits of Hormuz.
Sharing. It's going to be both our bikes. Only I'm going to take it home.
Right. Here is the thing, something that Care Bears taught me. And sharing is caring. Okay.
There it is.
And it's important to share. So we've got a lot of stuff on the docket here, but I want to start with Lebanon, because Lebanon has been, of course, at war. The Northern Resistance has been at war with the IDF for quite some time. Let's not forget Ansarallah, the leader, a longtime leader and religious cleric, some would say, of Hezbollah, was killed. I believe it was last year. So Lebanon, of course, has been back into the mix. But I want to just talk about it in terms of Israel again, because this is what they do, man. I'm going to play this right here, and I'll just get your response.
A massive hole yawned through the roadway of the Qasmiya Bridge in Lebanon on Monday, the day before Israeli forces struck the key bridge over the Litani River. The river is a natural boundary demarcating southern Lebanon, and destroying the crossings severs the south from the rest of the country.
As you can see, they struck this bridge, one of the most important bridges, connecting to Sidon and to Tyre. And as you can see, the Israelis do not care about bridges, nor do they care about civilians or anything else. They are striking everywhere.
Fighting between Israel and Iranian-backed Hezbollah fighters in Lebanon erupted anew after Hezbollah opened fire at the start of the U.S.-Israeli attack on Iran. Israel's President Isaac Herzog visited the city of Kiryat Shmona on Monday, where residents have endured Hezbollah rocket and mortar fire. Shortly after the visit, an air raid siren sent people running for shelter, and an explosion resonated. Israel's defense minister on Sunday said he had instructed the military to accelerate the demolition of Lebanese homes in frontline villages to end threats to Israelis, and to destroy all bridges over Lebanon's Litani River, which he said were used for, quote, terrorist activity. Lebanese authorities say the Israeli air and ground assault has killed more than 1,000 people.
And we believe it to be a lot more. Your thoughts? Can you break down what was real, what's not?
Well, no matter what they say, right? No matter what the Israelis say, the point of the matter is they intend to annex everything south of the Litani River. They've been talking about this since before even October 7th, right? Like, they've been asking the Lebanese to give up land to the south, right? Under the auspices of, we keep being attacked from this area. So, like, what happens? What do you think? Those people are just going to move north and stop attacking, right? Like, it's like even the excuses they give you don't really make sense. So no matter what they say, the whole point is Israel intends to expand. This is why there's no conversation about a ceasefire with Iran that's legitimate. Everybody understands this is for the fate of the Middle East. This is not going to stop in 12 days, 30 days. Somebody's going to win here and somebody's going to lose. And Israel's making it very clear they're going to take the land they want. They're not going to care about things like human rights, war statutes, because we all know that blowing up neighborhoods is an act of communal punishment, which is in fact a war crime as listed by the Geneva Conventions. Destroying bridges that are not that serve the public, right? These are not explicit military bridges. These are bridges that people, like you said, trying to go from Tyre to Sidon, right? Which are just two ancient cities. They're so old, they're in the Bible. And in the Bible, they weren't in Israel. Like, those cities were never in Israel, right? So, like, even for the people that are like, oh, they just want their old historical, Israelite nation. No, they want to become the hegemon of the Middle East, and the United States is giving them a head start.
Yeah, and that's what the Greater Israel Project is all about. They've been using that map for years now, and we've been talking about it for a while. That map should be stamped in everyone's mind, because I think that is one of the reasons they really wanted to pop this Iran war off, and that was because it was about those land grabs. But I want to show this because, again, I have, as a Palestinian, we have a deep love and respect for our kin, our cousins in Lebanon, and I just want to I want to show you this graph right here for our podcast listeners. I'm going to just try to read it out here. Israel has pushed Lebanon into the ranks of the world's worst displacement crisis almost overnight. Syria and Somalia took years to reach this level. Israel did this in 3 weeks. And you can see the percentages here. Gaza here is at 35%, Syria at 33%, Somalia 22%, South Sudan 20%, and right there you have Lebanon right between South Sudan and Sudan. So again, we get into the weeds, as we should, and we talk about the geopolitical ramifications, as we should. But this is what Israel does, and this displacement, and this is not a war. This is not a traditional war. This is, again, trying to annex land, trying to kill civilians, which they do at a high rate. So I just wanted to show that to our listeners, show that to our watchers, and tell that to our listeners, I guess I should say. But let's there's a lot of conflicts right now, Tanky, in the Middle East. I know people don't want us to say that it's a world war. You know, they're always being and moaning about that. But I don't know what to say when you got multiple regions here. This is a big deal, right? Clash report. 7 Iraqi army soldiers were killed and 13 wounded after a U.S. airstrike hit a clinic and engineering department at Habanaya base in Anbar. The base, which is shared by the Iraqi army and PMF Hashad al-Shabi, was struck in 2 consecutive U.S. attacks on March 24th and 25th. Baghdad called these strikes a serious violation of Iraqi sovereignty, especially because of a military medical facility was hit, and begun diplomatic and security consultations. Iraq is something that we've touched on here and there. What's happening there, and is there sort of, we were joking about it today, is the things that George W. Bush worked so hard for, are they being undone here by Donald Trump?
This whole house of cards has been kicked. This is what we talked about. This is why we consistently went with the metaphor of attacking a hornet's nest. And listen, for the people that are watching this on the left, and God bless you from whatever other spectrum, remember this. It's too easy to simplify this and say, oh, Iraq is just working at the behest of Iran. No. Iraq has its own legitimate grievances with the Americans. They've been trying to get them to leave since, one could say arguably, since they were illegally invaded, right? But there has been vote after vote in their parliament to make the Americans leave, and this has never happened, right? So the war pops off. Insurgency groups fire on these American bases, even places in the green zone, like in the movie, The Green Zone, right? That's a real place that happens in Baghdad. It's one of the most secured embassies on the face of the earth, and it's being hit with drones. It was so bad to the point that the NATO mission exited the theater and then ends up asking the Iraqi resistance for 24 hours of a ceasefire just so that they can move their troops out, because they're under such fire that they understand, first off, it's going to be very hard for the average NATO troop to explain, what happened. Most of the people in NATO have no idea that these guys are even still over there and think it's just Americans. So now when 50 Norwegians end up dead, and it's like, oh, what the fuck happened? Oh, they was down in Iraq. Politicians will pay a price for that. So these guys are trying to get a 24-hour ceasefire from the Iraqi resistance. And then as soon as the NATO contingents left and crossed the border to Turkey, the Americans came over and bombed the resistance. Like, this is what they're talking about. Like, these are problems that go far beyond Iran. And like, this is what we talk about. Like, even if America, right, let's live in an imaginary world where America really wanted a ceasefire with Iran. Israel's not going to stop, right? And let's say America and Iran stopped. Okay, let's say that they did. Let's say Israel stopped even. What's going on in Iraq, that's not going to stop. That's a totally different problem than the Iranian situation. It's just right now, it's the most useful time to exploit these differences that have been there since the American invasion.
Well, hey, guess what? It ain't over. That's not the last country that's going through a lot of issues right now. Maybe you shouldn't have aligned with the West. Maybe you shouldn't have been a vassal state for the West. Right here, report. Bahrain imports anti-riot troops as protests erupt over U.S. war with Iran. We've been protesting it, man. Bahrain has one of the most prestigious and famous F1 races. I know we're big, fans of race cars and things that go fast. Jordanian security personnel deployed as unrest grows and Iranian attacks target infrastructure in the island kingdom. We already know Iran is going tit for tat. You blow up something of mine, I blow up something of yours. That's not the only thing, because we also know Saudi tanks have been deployed there as well, and it doesn't look like it's going good for the hegemon of Bahrain. Check this out. Amazon, Amazon, they're big. They're big over there in Bahrain. That's to let you know that they're definitely not captured by the West. Amazon says AWS Bahrain region disrupted following drone activity. The disruption marks the second time in a month that AWS operations have been affected by the Iran war. United States tech giant Amazon has said its Amazon Web Services, AWS, region in Bahrain was disrupted among the current conflict in the Middle East following Iran's threats to target U.S. offices and infrastructure. Thoughts and feelings on Bahrain? We could talk about UAE. We could talk about Jordan. A lot seems to be happening because Iran, might be decolonizing.
The Gulf is on fire.
Yep.
I mean, literally and metaphorically, the Gulf is on fire, and anyone could have predicted this. Look. All of these countries exist on stupendous wealth that is incredibly hyper concentrated, at the top, the sheikh, the kings, these guys have incredible vast sums of wealth. And it mostly does not trickle down. These are kingdoms. We've been talking about this for a long time. The king, everything is for the king. Okay, but here's the thing. Though your head of state might be corrupt, you still have the people. Bahrain in particular is a fascinating incidence of a country. Overwhelmingly, the religious majority is Shia Islam. So, of course, those are people that are going to have sympathies for what is happening in Shia Iran. You know what I'm saying? The people's heart is always going to be with the Iranians. And this is something that anybody that spent a day researching Bahrain would understand. Okay. Now, when we see these troops move, and the other thing we got to remember is all of war is deception. We have 5,000 Jordanian troops that are now in Bahrain. They're saying there are about 5,000 Saudi troops in Iran. And this could just be a staging ground. When everybody's talking about the American Marines that are about to be deployed, when you look at those numbers, they don't seem to be a large enough force to really do an insertion and hold ground, right? They seem like the kind of numbers that you would use to establish a beachhead at best. I remind you guys again, there are 500,000 Russian soldiers in Ukraine, right? And when you're talking about Iran is just twice as big as Ukraine. So no matter what you think the skill of the American military is, 3,000 men on the numbers, that's not going to be enough. You know what I'm saying? It's just not. And so maybe what's happening in Bahrain is it's possible they're staging, but that's the best possible scenario, right? The worst possible scenario is they've lost control on the ground and they're needing all of these soldiers to keep a coup from happening. So now Iraq is about to go off the board as an American asset. Bahrain is blinking. No one knows how that's going to turn out. And that's just the beginning. How long will Kuwait, the people that live in Kuwait, allow their country to be catching these strays, right? They can't do anything to Iran. Iran is far too strong. The easier thing to do is to truly become the easiest thing for any of these countries to do, just speaking from a realistic point of view, is be neutral. I don't want to be on the side of the United States. I don't want to be on the side of Iran. This don't got nothing to do with us. What is Iran going to do to require neutrality? They're going to ask them to make the Americans leave. And that's already part of their list of demands of what they need for this conflict to end. So when we're seeing what the American proposal is, this 15-point plan where it's like, get rid of your missiles, give us all of your uranium. The Iranians are not going to be compelled to do that without you taking Tehran, right? And 3,000 soldiers is not enough to do that. They're just not.
I'm not going to keep this just to the Middle East, because you start seeing American bases get hit. You're starting to see, American allied oil infrastructure, energy infrastructure get hit. You see two people fighting in the parking lot. You start to get a little nervous. Maybe I should step out. You start doing this with your collar. So I just want to present this to you, my friend. You may have already seen this presented to our listeners. You know that Diego Garcia is a very highly touted military base, especially because of its location. Well, last week, Diego Garcia was hit, and this is what Iran has been doing. So this is a UK. This is a UK report. This is Sky News, and they are talking about the Diego Garcia base, but in a very particular context.
And if given that the United States is the lead of the fight, the war in Iran, it's an entirely legitimate target if you look at it through Iran's lens. It does appear the defensive systems have worked.
But as you were saying, expensively so, right?
Oh, very expensive. But what price do you pay on protecting yourself? I think the other interesting thing is that there's a lot of political commentary about whether our government was right not to side with America. And you go, the worry is always that if you do, you become a target. If Iran does have missiles that are capable of reaching the UK, then we would be very worried because we have no ballistic missile defense capability in this country. And therefore, this morning, rather than being Diego Garcia, which America has been launching attacks from, if we were actually involved in the war, we could be having a missile winging its way to London. We could certainly track it, but we couldn't do anything about it.
Couldn't do anything about it, my friend. I think Europe is... Everybody's kind of doing the thing with the finger under the collar right now, right?
Yeah. So one thing I want to talk about, though, we have to be careful with the language that we use. Diego Garcia was not hit. They were alleged to have been under fire. The story as it was presented was Iran fired 2 ballistic missiles, both of which were intercepted before they hit Diego Garcia. Now, here's where it becomes interesting. The Iranians have pretty much claimed all of the strikes. They normally give a warning to a place before they fire missiles. That is on record. Iran is on record of saying they never fired at Diego Garcia. As best it's been said, their missiles are somewhere around 2,000 to 3,000 kilometer range, whereas Diego Garcia is about 4,000 kilometers. So to the best of our knowledge, they don't have tech that goes that far yet. I just wanted to make that statement. Even Mark Rutte came out and said, we have no proof that Iran fired on Diego Garcia. And there are theories that, if anything, this was a false flag. Someone conveniently fired, and those missiles were intercepted, and the world may never know. That's if this happened at all. Again, this was a story that was put out by Israel, and we understand the great potential for, let's just say, propaganda, as it relates to war announcements. They're going to lie. Everybody's going to lie. It's just in the nature of war to lie. And so I have a lot of questions about what happened with Diego Garcia. But I think the response provoked exactly the opposite of whatever was intended. If it was meant to be a false flag, right, I think this is spectacularly failed because of the conversation we just heard from the Brits. The Brits don't really want to be involved because they don't have missile defense. Like, the truth of the matter is no one has missile defense. People sell things and they tell you it's missile defense. But really, all those surface-to-area missile sites, almost all of them, they're made to hit planes. They're made to hit planes. They're not made to hit hypersonic missiles. There is no defense for hypersonic missiles in military technology right now. There just isn't. It just has to miss. It has to miss badly, And a great many of these hypersonics these days have final maneuver adjustments. Right. So, you have to take all of that into consideration. Iran would have been forced to use its most powerful munition to even attempt a shot like that. And in such a scenario, it's hard to imagine they would only send 2 missiles because it's not in their pattern so far.
Man, thank you for the context, man. I appreciate that. I hadn't even known that. Let's pivot a little bit, shall we? Because we're going to move over here to Ukraine. I know people don't like to talk about Ukraine, and especially in the context of World War III, because you could have talked about World War III. Has been like this in the Donbass, certainly, for quite some time. Major drone strikes from both countries we hear as sort of Ukraine sort of had this offensive. This is the counteroffensive. And if for our listeners, our podcast listeners, this is a map of all the drones that were launched from Russia into Ukraine. And it looks like a great many of them. We've been hearing sort of about, the slow movement of the Russian, ground troops and the ground forces slowly taking land, slowly but surely. But with all the things being said sort of by the Trump administration, the money has been drying up. The money that they do have, we're not quite sure how they're keeping up with this. Some people would mention, slush funds and things of that nature. But the pressure looks like it's being turned up here. You're having drone strikes as far as Lviv. Give me your thoughts. What's happening right now in Russia and Ukraine, and again, just a larger part of World War III?
Man, first off, this is my favorite shit in the world. I love breaking down these maps and talking about what's happening, because it just looks like a bunch of squiggles, but all of these are flight paths. So first off, a little bit of pretext, right? Why we continue to say this is World War III. There are hotspots and they're all connected. And you have the same players that are involved in all of these things. You have drone strikes that are happening inside of Ukraine, which are based upon the Iranian Shahed drone, right? Originally, everyone made fun of Iranian tech. They thought it was below military grade. They thought it was substandard, right? But drones are what turned the war around against the Ukrainians. Now, a little bit more context. For the past 3 weeks, the Iranians have been flying hundreds of military drones into Russia proper. There was an explosion in St. Petersburg, which used to be the capital of Russia. I mean, that is just imagine a we don't have, as Americans, we already know what would happen if someone flew a military drone into New York. We already know what would happen. It would be bad. So the Ukrainians flew drones into St. Petersburg, hundreds of them for days at a time. One day would come, they would release 100. Next day would come, they would release another 100. Next day would come, they would release another 100. And the whole point was take away Russia's ability to defend, because fuck what you heard. Modern warfare is won with drones and artillery. The rest of the stuff is just sexy shit. Drones and artillery, okay? Because it takes very expensive rockets to air defense, right? Drones, which are very inexpensive. So that becomes attrition. And all of these wars are attritional warfare, like World War I was. That's what we're back to, After hundreds of those attacks had happened, after days of 100 attacks, Russia responded with a drone swarm of their own. And first they sent like 300 drones, in the first wave. And the Ukrainian missile defense did, as it is told, quite exceptional. It was something like 95% accuracy. And almost all of those drones were blown up. And normally that's about what Russia will do. However, something was different. In Russian Aerotech, they had just released a new satellite, and that satellite had been doing intelligence over Ukraine, right? So it watched all of those drones get fired out. It figured out where the locations were, and then the Russians sent a second wave of drones. And this one looked like even more. It's like 400. Right. And there was just incredible damage that they were able to do. So what you're looking at on that map is all of the flight paths of those drones. Right. And then unheard of, they launched a third strike. There were 3 drone strikes within 24 hours, and more than 1,000 drones, military drones, came from Russia and hit targets all over Ukraine. Ukraine is being decimated. Do not let anyone lie to you and make you believe that they have any type of a chance. They don't. They never had a chance. Their whole job was to absorb the mass of the Russian army so that the rest of the West could go everywhere else they wanted without any fear of the Russians being able to interfere, because the Russians were supposed to be having problems of their own. Well, it looks like the Russians are handling those problems quite efficiently. And the last thing I'll say about this is the irony, right? Remember General Lloyd, what was his last name? Lloyd.
We always called him Big Lloyd, but
Big Lloyd, right?
Crack team on it.
Right. The last Secretary of State, the last Secretary of War for the United States.
Secretary of State. He was a Secretary of State.
No, he was a Secretary of
Defense. Yeah,
right, Secretary of Defense, right? So the last Secretary of Defense, General Lloyd, had told Zelensky, you don't need missiles. You don't need, because remember, that was the whole thing. Zelensky was saying, I need Tomahawks. I need Tomahawks. And the Americans knew those Tomahawks were already accounted for. They needed them for their own adventures. And General Lloyd kept telling Zelensky.
Lloyd Austin, by the way.
Lloyd Austin, thank you. General Lloyd Austin told Zelensky straight up, you can win this war with drones. If you're going to win it with drones. Because Lloyd Austin wanted to see the Ukrainians doing those type of strikes on Russia. But see, drones are not sexy. They're still looked at as the weapons of small countries, not proper Western. He wanted F-16s. What's doing more damage right now, drones or F-16s? F-16s are getting shot out the fucking sky all over the world. I'm sorry, they're having technical difficulties and being shot down by patriots. Whatever you want to believe.
I was saying F-18 was just shot down this morning, by the way. So that's to let you know what it is. And your point is so well taken, bro. Like, think the wars are not fought the way that they were fought in the 90s. Do you have drones? Do you have anti-drone capabilities? Do you have missiles? Do you have missile defense? This is where you need to start a lot of your military. And I think we think of America as a modern military, but they have an old school military mentality. That's why Trump was trying to bring back those battleships. When, again, I don't know when the last time they were useful. I'm sure you could tell us when the last time a battleship was useful.
World War One, the Battle of the Dardanelles, where you lost 7.
Yeah, so several generations have passed since this is something that's useful. But again,
$40 billion. I just want to say $40 billion battleship. $100,000 of drones. Which do you think will win?
Yeah, and
it's a doomed idea from the start.
And this is why the war on Iran was never going to be successful in the way that they wanted. There's no regime change. There's no, there's no protests on the street. I mean, there's protests for the new Ayatollah because Trump doesn't even want to acknowledge he exists. I mean, the new Ayatollah has become Voldemort for Trump. Don't even mention this guy's name when you're don't say that name. And
Trump sees him as the dude that burned up all the ammunition.
Yeah, well, the war's 15 out of 10 going well, and 100% of the military has been demolished. But that 0% is the only ones that seems to be kind of getting in with the strikes here. It's completely ridiculous and absurd, and the world is absurd, and the world is tired of America and the things that they say and they do, and their little buddy, their wife Israel. Doing the same. It's just a match made in heaven. America has been genociding for hundreds of years, even before Israel. And Israel came up and they was like, oh, wow, you remind me of a young me. They just kind of been, husband and wife or whatever you want to call it, whatever you think their relationship is. They're pretty much tied at the hip. And this is how they do. They attack civilians. They live in the 90s. They live in a reality that doesn't exist. And the rest of the world has had to keep up. It's like when the champion is so good and he's just, dancing on everybody. Well, a lot of other people are watching how you move, and they're watching that boxer or they're watching that UFC fighter, that MMA fighter, and they're thinking to themselves, this is how you beat him. I've been watching you for 10 years. I got all this film on you. I'm watching you for 20 years, 30 years, 40 years.
Know all of your tendencies.
Where all your men gonna be? Especially when we got Chinese satellites over there picking out where all your planes are.
How are these guys getting such good ISR? I don't know. How are the Ukrainians?
Right. And there's a lot of questions you can ask yourself about Ukraine and how Ukraine was
questions.
Yeah. Well, we had answers. Anyway, let's give a shout out to our podcast listeners. We're available everywhere you find podcasts, Apple, Spotify. Hopefully it won't take us down. I'm not even going to throw that in the air anymore. We're back. YouTube, like, subscribe, comment for the algorithms. Patreon.com/InnerCityLeft. We love y'all. What can I say? We're working on music. Oh, I dropped a song today, by the way. TMK. Everywhere you find music. Fables, Foibles, Other American Sins. Go get that. You need that in your library. It'll make it look very classy. And it's going to, explain to you and help you through the beautiful art and science of poetry. That's all I got. Things we missed, some tanky thoughts. What's up?
25,619,750,000 have been spent on this affair so far. Congress hasn't voted for shit. It's just, we got money to do it. What is it? What do we need? We talked about $20 billion to end
short-term homelessness in the United States. Yeah. Yeah, well, it's that gross. It's that terrible that people are still out here wondering how we can afford this and that, and we can't afford that. But they just pulled how much? 20 billion?
Make it enough.
Make it 28 billion. Print some more money, right? Oh, and we didn't even get into the whole Trump announced there's going to be a ceasefire to manipulate mass. Man, that'd be for another day.
That's a whole episode. Oh my God.
My goodness.
Supply and demand, y'all.
Look, we'll give them another We're gonna give you guys another episode before the week is up, or at least on Sunday. We had things to take care of. But anyway, we're not going nowhere. We love you guys. We appreciate you guys. For Amoja, Lil Tanky Summer, I'm Amin TMK. This is the Inner City Left broadcast. Peace.
System riding to the core. Yeah. Reppin' Inner City Left.